In 1939, the United States Navy made a decision that quietly helped shape the walls of the modern American home. They had a choice between a natural material that had already proven itself for centuries and a synthetic product that had only just entered the market. They chose the synthetic. That choice sounds small. It was not. Because once that decision aligned with wartime industry, mass production, and post-war construction, one material was pushed toward dominance and another began to disappear. And the strangest part is this. The material that faded away was not weak, outdated, or impractical. In some of the ways that matter most in a building, it may actually have been the smarter option. So if that is true, why did America stop building with cork? And the strangest part is this. The material that faded away was not weak, outdated, or impractical. In some of the ways that matter most in a building, it may actually have been the smarter option. So if that is true, why did America stop building with cork? That question matters for a reason. Because this is not just a story about insulation. It is a story about how modern systems decide what survives, what gets scaled, and what gets forgotten. And once you see that pattern here, you start seeing it everywhere. Long before fiberglass existed, cork was already being used where performance mattered. Builders around the Mediterranean understood that cork was not just bark. It was a naturally engineered material, light, durable, resistant to moisture, and unusually stable across changing conditions. It had an internal structure that made it exceptional. Cork is made up of millions of tiny closed cells, most of them filled with air. That structure gives it a combination that is rare in one material: thermal insulation, acoustic dampening, flexibility, resilience, and resistance to water. In other words, cork was not valued because it was old. It was valued because it worked. It performed well in real buildings, in real climates, and over long periods of time. And unlike many modern materials, it achieved that without depending on heavy chemical processing. Then there was the way it was harvested. Cork comes from the bark of the cork oak, mainly in Portugal and Spain. The tree is not cut down. The bark is removed carefully, the tree remains alive, and years later, it can be harvested again. The same tree can keep producing usable cork for generations. That should have made cork one of the most attractive building materials in the modern world. Useful, renewable, durable, naturally moisture-resistant, and tied to living landscapes instead of one-time extraction. On paper, it had almost everything. So why did it lose ground? Not because it stopped making sense, but because the rules of the building world were changing. And this is where the story moves from material science into power, scale, and timing. By the early 20th century, industry was reorganizing construction around a new logic. The best material would not always win. Very often, the material that won was the one that fit mass production best. Fiberglass entered at exactly the right moment for that new system. It could be manufactured in huge volumes. It could be standardized. It could be shipped widely. It fit expanding supply chains, modern factory output, and the post-war need to build fast, cheap, and everywhere. And once a material gets that kind of industrial momentum, it becomes more than a product. It becomes a default. Builders learn it. Suppliers stock it. Codes adapt to it. Installers expect it. Architects specify it. Over time, people stop asking whether it was the best choice in the first place. That is how entire industries lock in. Not always through a dramatic conspiracy, often through scale, convenience, timing, and repetition. The system starts rewarding whatever is easiest to mass produce, not necessarily whatever performs best across the full life of a building. And that is what makes cork so interesting. Because even after it lost mainstream dominance, many of its strengths did not disappear. Cork still offered a combination of insulation value, sound control, durability, low weight, and natural resistance to moisture that remained impressive. It also avoided some of the trade-offs that came with heavily industrialized synthetic materials. Over time, homeowners and builders became more aware of issues involving indoor air quality, moisture management, handling concerns, and the long-term performance of materials that were originally chosen for speed and cost first. Suddenly, the old material did not look old anymore. It looked overlooked. And that changes the meaning of the whole story. Because maybe cork was not a relic of the past. Maybe it was an example of a high-performing natural material that simply did not fit the industrial priorities taking over the 20th century. In Europe, cork never vanished in the same way. That matters. The source was local, the tradition remained stronger, and the manufacturing network stayed closer to the forests that produced it. In the United States, cork was further from the center of the new industrial building machine, and that distance mattered. But there is another layer here, and it may be the most important one. Cork oak landscapes are not just material supply zones. They are living ecosystems. They support biodiversity. They store carbon. They survive through careful stewardship over long periods of time. When cork remains valuable, those landscapes remain valuable too. So this is not just about what goes into a wall. It is about what kind of world our material choices support. A regenerative landscape or an extractive system. A material tied to long-term ecological care, or one tied mainly to industrial throughput. And that is why the original question matters so much. If cork was durable, renewable, proven, and still highly functional, then its decline tells us something bigger than the history of insulation. It tells us that modern building culture often mistakes what scales best for what serves us best. Once you understand that, the story becomes hard to forget. A material can be effective, it can be elegant, it can be regenerative, it can make sense on nearly every level that matters, and it can still lose simply because another material fit the machinery of modern industry better. So maybe the real lesson is not just that America stopped building with cork. Maybe the real lesson is how many smart, durable, natural materials were pushed aside once speed, volume, and control became the priorities that defined progress. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which forgotten natural material I should cover next. And if you want more stories about plants, building materials, and the powerful ideas modern industry left behind, subscribe and join me for the next one.